12th of January 2023, the United States Office of the Director of National Intelligence published the unclassified version of its 2022 annual report on unidentified aerial phenomena. But what relevant information does it contain? And does it shift the paradigm of the entire UFO-UAP community? Join myself and Neil as we delve into this dry work to try and sort salient facts from speculative supposition. And this week's episode is dedicated to our Explorer of the Week. This week it is D. Nandwani. D has been with us since the very beginning of the launch of our Patreon, and we very much appreciate all the help and support we get from D and our other explorers, and of course every single person who helps make this podcast happen through our Patreon. If you want to get involved as well, go to patreon.com/aliens explored and pick a tier that suits you. We have all kinds of tiers for all kinds of people and a wide variety of benefits as well. So go check that out. Links are in the description. But this week, D. Nandwani, you are our Explorer of the Week.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a skeptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it? Hello listeners and welcome back to Aliens Explored, your weekly look at the mysterious skies and beyond. I'm one of your presenters, Neil Kelly.
And I'm your other presenter, Stu Jackson. How are you doing, Neil?
Yeah, I'm doing very well, thanks. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Having an eventful time, keeping busy as one does.
Well, yeah. I've got a job that takes up most of my time.
Yes.
So. And sort of, it counts as acting. It counts, Equity have recognised that immersive theatre is an art form that they need to have a special branch for.
Oh God, immersive theatre is one of the hardest forms of acting because when you're doing it on film, you can get to do take after take after take. All right?
No, you're made to do take after take after take.
I don't personally, but hey, people do. But in theatre, you can't do that. But in theatre, there's a distance between you and the audience. Now, that is a skill set in its own, as we know, because you then have to sort of project, and people think projection is just about talking loudly. No. No, projection's far more complex than that because you're projecting your emotional state as well as your voice, and projecting your voice isn't just shouting.
Well, it's a whole art form, isn't it? Making your gestures making them big enough to be seen by someone way back at the back of the auditorium, way up in the gods, and yet still look kind of natural.
Yeah, and natural to the people on the front row as well.
Yeah.
Which, there's a big difference. So that's absolutely it. But immersive theatre...
you've got to... You've got a script, but you've got to improvise around it, and you've got to deal with people. I suppose stand-up comedy has that element to it. You've got to deal with hecklers.
Yes.
You've got the stuff that you came on to say, but you've also got to have lots of spare stuff in your back pocket ready to throw back at whatever people may hurl at you.
Absolutely. But I always think with immersive theatre, the kind of the real skill lies. I mean, because improvisation is something we can all learn, but to be convincing and genuine when your audience member is like 6 inches away from you and looking you right in your eyes, that's a real. And as we know, like you and I, we met doing anime. So to me, Father Christmas is immersive theatre.
Yeah, it's
exactly what it is. And yeah, to be I mean, especially portraying a fantastical character like that, to be genuine, to be convincing and believable at that sort of distance. So you have my admiration under it. And also, turning up to the same place day after day.
At least there's a place that's not far from home. My travel time is negligible. My travel costs are pretty much zero. Also, I think the show that I'm doing, Monopoly Life Sized, has... I mean, one of the things that's come up with equity is that as it's not a brand new art form, as you say, but it's becoming very, very, very widespread. There are lots and lots and lots of immersive shows in London now, catering to most tastes. There are things like War of the Worlds, Peaky Blinders, Stranger Things, Saw. You name it. There's an Only Fools and Horses dining experience. Mm-hmm. Oh, no, it's not. Only Fools and Horses is a West End show. Fawlty Towers dining experience. So, and there's all these murder mystery events. But I think Monopoly Life Sized has issues that a lot of these shows don't have, in that I think most of those shows, they will be attended by people who enjoy the show and want to immerse themselves in it and play the games and do it. What they probably have less of, that we have a lot of, is being used for corporate team building days, where you get a lot of people there who make it plain they really don't want to be there, or they're too cool for school, or they're just going to act like a dick because, or they're going to show up absolutely blind drunk. I mean, we had one team, they were sneaking out to the toilet and sort of coming back sniffing and rubbing their gums and wired.
Right.
Because
with a bit of talcum powder on the nose,
because they drunk themselves to a standstill, and the only way they could keep going was with a bit of marching powder in the toilet. So they were seriously off their faces. I think most shows don't have to deal with that. Although I've been reading a lot about West End shows that, especially ones that feature jukebox musicals, having issues with audience members who get drunk and sing along and dance along. And there's one show, I think it's Dirty Dancing.
Yes.
On the poster, it actually says it has them dancing in the aisles, and the cast are saying, "I really wish they didn't put that, because what we don't want is people dancing in the aisles. We want them to just enjoy the show."
Yes, that's been quite a thing in the news. Anyway, that's not what we're here to do. I will say, because just as a thing, Only Fools and Horses is also a dining experience, because I know the woman who plays Raquel. She dual roles, Raquel and what's his name, Boyce's wife.
Marlene.
Marlene. That's it. Yeah, she plays Raquel and Marlene. Shout out to Natalie if you're listening. I doubt you are. But no, it is a dining experience. Anyway, enough of this talk of acting. It has monopolized enough of the episode.
I saw what you did there. So you did. Very clever. Yeah. No, we're here to talk about something else. We're here to talk about the 2022 annual report on unidentified aerial phenomena, released by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence of the United States of America. So the report is out.
It is. So worth mentioning, first of all, what we're going to be talking about is the unclassified version. Because we don't have
access to the classified version,
which is a shame.
Let me just get some of the acronyms out of the way, and one of the main features.
I've got news on that, on one of the acronyms, but go ahead.
Okay, the ones we're going to talk about. First of all, the UAPTF. That's Uniform Alpha Papa Tango Foxtrot. That is the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. Now,
Yes.
in July, that was replaced by a new organisation called the AARO, which is the Alpha Alpha Romeo Oscar,
Oscar.
which is the I was going to say omelette, which is the which is the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, and this was done on the orders of the ODNI, the Oscar Delta November India Office of the Director of National Intelligence, who's produced this report. So yeah, they've got this new body there. So just get those up when we start talking about the AARO and the UAPTF.
Yes. Well, there are a huge amount of acronyms in this report, and interestingly enough, so the biggest one of all, you sort of covered it in part, UAP, which the report itself does specifically say it's unidentified aerial phenomena. But I went on to our Twitter channel, Twitter page, Twitter whatever, and I asked UFO Twitter, or Twitter UFO, no, UFO Twitter, sorry, what do people think the A stands for in UAP? Because I've heard both. I've heard two things. I've heard unidentified aerial phenomena, and I've heard unidentified anomalous phenomena as well. And do you know what? We got 116 votes on this particular poll, and the result was quite staggering. Which do you think it was, Neil? Because I know you wouldn't. You're
well,
not
if the result was
Twitter,
staggering, I'm sure you're going to say that A stands. Most people thought A stands for anomaly.
It does. It does. 75% of people said it stood for anomalous. Yeah.
Okay.
And apparently the reason behind this was a lot of people have commented, and really appreciate the engagement that people have had with this. It was aerial. And certainly the report that we're going to be talking about from the ODNI does specifically say aerial, but a lot of people have moved over to anomalous because it includes transmedium craft.
Well, I mean, it seems that the acronyms are getting more vague, but in order to be more encompassing. So a UFO, an unidentified flying object, that is actually a thing. That is actually some sort of craft in the sky. You can see
it's
flying.
A flying object rather than just an optical illusion or
when you see lights
floating or falling.
Yeah, so when you see lights in the sky, that could be an object. It could be, the running lights on an aircraft or helicopter, but it might be something else. It could be a trick of the light. It could be a reflection. It could be whatever. It could be some sort of something from another dimension. So in order to accommodate that, instead of talking about an unidentified flying object, they're talking about unidentified aerial phenomena. And now we seem to have moved from aerial phenomena to all domain anomaly, the AARO.
Yes, that's the government branch specifically. But yeah, UAP, unidentified anomalous phenomena. I can get on board with that because we've seen, we certainly saw with those videos that the Pentagon acknowledged were real, the ones taken from the USS Nimitz, that you've got transmedium devices. So you've got, craft that fly, but they also go into the water as well.
They were lights, weren't they? We couldn't tell if they were what substance they were.
The tic tac.
I mean, just a sort of tic tac shaped light, didn't you? It was moving like an object, but
I think it's safe to say they were object. That and gimbal. I think it's safe to say they were objects.
I don't think I can be that sure that it's actually an object. That it's actually a substantial physical object. especially as it has the capability of this trans medium that can go straight from flying through the air to diving under the sea. We don't have any objects that can do that, so maybe it isn't quite as substantial.
Well, didn't the Tic Tac even cast a shadow over the water in one of the videos?
But
I'd have to revisit
cloud,
the video to be 100% certain.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But a cloud can cast a shadow, doesn't it? So
you wouldn't call the cloud an object?
it's not a solid object, is it? And that's what I'm talking about. Differentiating between a solid object and something else. Okay. We're gonna get lost in terminology here, aren't we?
Way down the rabbit hole there.
Yeah. So this is a short report. It's 12 pages in total, including the cover page and the table of contents. But it's a dry read. There's an executive summary on one page, a scope and assumptions page, and then a little page on government changes to manage UAP issues. And that's when they say that they're going to meet expanded criteria. The AARO was established as the UAPTF successor on 20th of July 2022.
Before we get into it too much, I suggest we go through it page by page and pick out any highlights that we've identified as the ideal thing.
Okay, I mean, I sort of read the... I read it in the order that I'd read a report when I was working in the corporate world. I read the executive summary, and I went straight to the conclusions.
Okay. Do you always read the last page of a murder mystery book first as well?
No, but this isn't. This is a very listeners. This is a very, very dry read. Oh yeah, I should also say that 12 pages includes 1, 2, 3, 4 pages of appendices. Yes, so 4 pages of appendices, a cover page, a table of contents, an executive summary, and then what's left is the meat in between. So there's not that much to it in this unclassified version of the document.
The meat itself is very lengthy and wordy in the way it's presented.
It's not an entertaining read. You wouldn't read it like a novel.
I found it quite entertaining, personally. No, it's definitely not like a novel, though, but it was informative. I felt so. This came out January the 12th this year, 2023, even though it's the 2022 version. And in case listeners are wondering why we've waited till now, we're in March before talking about it is basically because we had that break and we were just sort of catching back up on things. So, table of contents, like you say, and nothing of particular note there. However, I identified a few things in the executive summary. What did you make of the executive summary then?
The executive summary... pretty much as was in the final summary, that they're establishing the Department of Defense All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office to facilitate more coordinated UAP efforts. I guess picking up things that UAP would have regarded as outside their scope because they're not up in the sky. But picking up any kind of anomaly. I guess an anomaly can also be something that's picked up by instruments rather than by the naked eye.
Yes, indeed.
But I suppose the main thing is that UAP events continue to occur in restricted or sensitive airspace. And the two main things they're concerned about in this report are flight safety, the possibility that these unauthorized, whatever they are, might collide with aircraft on a planned route, or it might be some sort of intelligence gathering activity by an adversary. Those are the two. I can't see any mention of possible paranormal or extraterrestrial origin in this report.
Well, an adversary is a broad term. They don't specifically say a terrestrial adversary, so they're not ruling out extraplanetary.
No, but they're also saying that anyone who comes from another planet is an adversary. And of course they would, because they're the Department of Defense. Everyone, anything that they don't understand, anything that isn't theirs, is an adversary.
Well, they would say they would be concerned by surveillance from an adversary, and I get that. You would be less concerned by surveillance from an ally, though, wouldn't you?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. When I was in the military, when I was working in Army intelligence, it was kind of accepted. Yeah, the Russians know we are conducting intelligence operations against them. We are monitoring their radio broadcasts. We're jotting this stuff down. Where we're working out their order of battle, everything. We're working out the movements of senior officers, all that sort of stuff. That doesn't necessarily mean to need to be so secret. It wouldn't be embarrassing if it was revealed that that's what we're doing, because we've kind of picked sides. But what would be very embarrassing to a prime minister would be, for instance, if someone who thought we were an ally discovered that we were conducting covert operations against them. That would be far more sensitive. We can't trust this ally. We're not going to share this information with them at a low level, or we're actually going to actively try and subvert their staff or gain access to their restricted facilities or whatever. So, yeah, spying by an ally who's maybe hedging their bets that they might not be an ally after a while, or that they just don't trust you. NATO is a club of all sorts of countries that don't really trust each other.
I'm going to chip in and say that surveillance isn't necessarily spying.
Well,
surveillance isn't always an aggressive, negative
I'm sure
action.
Spies all the way from Mata Hari up to now have tried to argue that on their way to the firing squad.
Well, okay, I'm going to give you an example of what kind of is going through my head. So, Mr. and Mrs. Blogs, they have a newborn baby. They take the baby home. They look after the baby. They go out and get a baby monitoring device so they can listen to the baby. They can hear when the baby is crying, and they're downstairs in the living room watching Star Trek or whatever.
Yeah.
That's surveillance.
It's surveillance, but it's also...
It's not spying.
Taking your kid to the park and sitting there on the bench while they play on the swings and slides. That's surveillance.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
it's not spying.
Absolutely.
But certainly, as that child gets older, they will start to regard that surveillance as intrusive. And they're going to suddenly start. Yeah, they're going to suddenly start putting up barriers and saying, no, listen, no further. You don't just walk into my room when you feel like it without knocking. That sort of thing.
Well, no, my point is that surveillance doesn't automatically mean that it's a negative or the action of an adversary necessarily. Anyway, we've gone down a bit of a rabbit hole there.
No, let's put it this way. If you're conducting surveillance over an American military or any kind of military site without the authorization of the people on the site, who could have just told you what was there anyway, but they're listening to you, you will get shot down. In wartime, warplanes have they emit a signal. So as they're returning to their own lines, obviously the air defences are up. Any aircraft approaching which isn't emitting that signal gets shot down.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had, the start of the Iraq War. I remember an RAF jet was shot down because there was something wrong with the signal. It's the default. You shoot down any aircraft that doesn't.
In wartime.
Another example. 2 cops up in Berwick upon Tweed, which is up north of England, up near the right on the Scottish border, they set up a speed trap to catch speeding drivers, and they had their radar gun, and they were playing around with it, and one of the cops suddenly clocked what appeared to be a vehicle approaching at somewhere like 400 miles per hour. After which his radar gun he thought, well, there must be something wrong with the radar gun. So they obviously nothing appeared, nothing in sight. And they went back to the police station, and their desk sergeant says, "What were you doing with your radar gun out there?" They said, "Nothing, sergeant. We're just sort of playing around." So, well, what happened was, I think it was a Dutch Royal Air Force Tornado conducting low-level exercises over the North Sea. The aircraft detected that it was being tracked by a radar beam. Obviously, their beam went off and over the horizon or out of their sight hit this aircraft. This aircraft just detected it as unknown, therefore presumed hostile radar or anti-aircraft system. And so the aircraft automatically armed a Sidewinder missile ready to fire at the source of the radar. But the pilot noticed it was happening and switched it off because he knew he was on an exercise in a peaceful area. There's no way he was about to be shot down, so he disengaged it. But aircraft defend themselves. It's something the pilot just doesn't have to think about.
Okay, from my perspective, you've just proved my point, because for one thing, the police were surveilling effectively the aircraft, but they definitely weren't adversarial about it. Inadvertently, but they weren't adversarial about it. Secondly, the aircraft was surveilling. Well, they were surveilling. It was surveilling the measures that it perceived to be taking against them. It was surveilling the surveillance.
Again, the aircraft,
that's non-adversarial.
In military terms, in wartime, you don't have a fail safe. You have a fail dangerous. If the system fails, it fires a missile. If nuclear missile submarines, they every now and then will surface and they expect to receive a signal, and the signal says, "Don't launch your missiles." If they don't get that signal, they launch their missiles at their intended targets. They wipe out millions of people because that's the default. Because the reason that for not getting that signal, that message to not shoot their missiles, could be because all the command and control systems have already been destroyed by an adversary. So they've just got to assume, we're not getting that. We're not being told not to, so let's just do it. It's adversarial. We're talking the military here, and their job is to be adversarial and to attack enemies.
That's the military mindset. I get that. But we're talking potentially here about non-military things, and I'm going to stick to my guns and say surveillance isn't always an attack. Anyway, we've spent 15 minutes talking about what surveillance actually means rather than talking about this report. So let's get stuck into it. So we're still on page 2, this executive summary. There were 3 sentences that stood out to me. The first one is the very, very, very first sentence, the top line of the executive summary. Unidentified aerial phenomena, UAP, reporting is increasing.
Yes.
That's a bold, big statement right there. It's on the increase.
It's on the increase, but I think I can think of very mundane reasons why that is.
So can I. I think increased awareness is a big part of it, and the fact that UAPs are now being taken far more seriously. We'll come on to that in a little.
I don't think that is the reason.
Well, later on. Okay, but why do you think there's an increase in UAP reports?
I mean, we're talking about a vast increase. There were 144 UAP reports during the 17 years of UAP reporting up until, I forgot what point that was. But there have been 247 new reports and another 119 that were either since discovered or reported after the preliminary assessments time period. Okay, I think of a number of factors. For one, there is less stigma. It used to be, if you say, the term used to be UFO. Yeah. And if you said, I saw a UFO, people automatically, they didn't think, oh, you saw something flying that you couldn't identify. You think you saw a flying saucer with little green men in it. Let's take the piss out of this guy. I think there's more acceptance that a UFO just means just that. And even more vague with UAP. You saw something in the sky that you couldn't rationalize away. Let's just say that. A second factor is that people are far more likely to have a movie camera on them these days, or any kind of camera. So, you might see something in the sky. You're driving along, a long 6-hour drive across western Texas or somewhere. You see something in the sky halfway through the journey. You think, oh, that's a bit funny. And then you drive on, and by the time you've got to the end, you've forgotten all about it. Or maybe later somebody will remind you, and you say, oh, yeah. But, you don't actually report it. Whereas now you can actually stop and get footage of it, which you can then show. Another factor is public domain in which people share information has changed from a physical space, like down the local pub, where people would share their views on things, and to a virtual presence where people can get themselves into echo chambers. So down the pub, you might say something like, the earth is flat, or the royal family are the extraterrestrial lizard shapeshifters. And people would tell you, don't be so stupid, or they'll laugh at you, they'll make fun of you. Even if someone else agrees with you, they might think, oh, I'm going to keep quiet because they're really ripping the piss out of this guy. Whereas online, you can find yourself in an echo chamber where you're getting you're not interacting with anyone who doesn't agree with you, or very few people who don't agree with you.
I need to interject because we've gone way, way, way off topic here, because this report is not from members of the public. These are not reports from people in the street. Okay.
But that would be why there is, but there's going to be an increased number of people in the street reporting, isn't it? People who see things and can video them.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm absolutely 100% on board with that. But yeah, in the executive summary, it does say that there has been a total, as of 30th of August 2022, a total of 510 UAP reports. Now, I can tell you that probably in America alone, you'll get more than that reported every day. So they're saying there have been a total of 510. Well, unfortunately, before we get any further on this, we have run out of time for this week. We should have known that this would take a couple of weeks worth.
Well, allowing for our usual digressions, which we like to put in, which are a feature of this show. We were always bound to run out of time on whatever it was we were talking about. So if you want to go through this thing point by point, I think we'll have to take a break and resume.
But we would love to hear from you listeners about any thoughts of what we've discussed so far, any opinions and thoughts. And, of course, if you've read the report yourselves, anything that jumps out to yourselves as well. You can contact us the usual ways on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube by searching Aliens Explored, or you can email us aliensexplored@gmail.com. And, of course, there is our Patreon-only Discord channel, where if you subscribe to one of our Patreon tiers, then you get exclusive access to that, as well as some other lovely goodies as well, depending on what tier you subscribe to. So check that out, patreon.com/Aliens Explored. So yes, and we'll be back next week to continue the debate. Are you ready for that, Neil?
Part 2 of how 2 or more? We'll see, won't we?
2.
Yeah, keep it up. So, let's not infer too much about our listeners' patience.
Absolutely. So, see you next time.
Bye bye.
Aliens Explored is a Fecal Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter or Facebook by searching Aliens Explored, or visit us on aliensexplored.com.